Hello and welcome back to Premier Injuries, and today, Ben, we are previewing the scariest group in the tournament. I know you can hear the music, it's really tense here. We're talking about the group of death. Now this one, as I said there's a lot of talent. But before we get into it, just to calm your nerves for a second and maybe make you feel a little bit more positive and happy, we've got a competition here at Premier Injuries. Just as shocking, really, isn't it, Ben? Your acting is on point today, and also you're representing the Netherlands as well with such a brilliant, bright top. But in terms of it, we are representing you, we are helping you get into the fan team to be able to win £200,000 or a share of the £1 million prize draw. It is sensational stuff. All you have to do, 3 really easy steps. Step 1, like, share, subscribe to the Premier Injuries channel. That's the first one. And get involved in the comments below. I really loved it in the last video. We had 19 comments all talking about different sorts of things, talking about England, will they be taking it home? So that really put me in a good mood, and I love talking with the community. The second step is to follow the link which is in the description to sign up to FanTeam. Use our code and you will be into the fan team tournament. And in step 3, send us your team IDs, because we need to know who we're sending this lovely fan team entry to. Easy as ABC 1 2 3, and then you're possibly entered into the tournament. And Ben throwing that 1 2 3 again, which I definitely can't do. There you go, 3 2 1. But let's go 3 2 1 into the group of death, Group F, and we start with the F team, France, who are on an A standard at the moment. They've got a FIFA ranking of 2nd, which is a little bit shocking to me. I thought they would have been first, but Belgium have pipped them to that. They qualified in first position, expected points first, no surprises there. But they did have a loss in qualification. Otherwise, it would have been a near perfect qualification period. 8 wins, 1 draw, 1 loss, 25 goals scored, 27.8 xg or 2.11 xg per 90, and then goals conceded 6, and xg goals conceded of 6.4. And actually they had the best defence with just 0.53 xga per 90. Ridiculous kind of stats. The top goal scorer, I think, is quite interesting and will cause a little bit of debate in the community as to whether you should bring him in as a cheaper alternative forward. Olivier Giroud, somebody that Chelsea and Arsenal fans will know very well. He's a fantastic kind of player for the France team, the way that he links up play. He does an important job for them, and probably something a bit different to Benzema. He's not necessarily a goal scorer, but anyway, we will get on to the France team. They're obviously current world champions, and I have to say they have a scary level of strength in depth. For some reason, the country, I don't know what they're feeding their kids, but it is like golden generation on steroids. With each position, there's somebody else that can fill in and make up for it. The World Cup under 21 side is full of so many good players that team itself could really, be counted as one of the favourites for this tournament. So it's no kind of surprise that the team are in such good form. So the team have been in good form since qualification, though. They topped a hard group in the UEFA Nations League, which contained Sweden, Croatia and Portugal. But most importantly, in their group of death, the French side managed 2 1-0 wins against Portugal. So they'll have a bit of confidence going into that. And in their last 6 competitive matches, the side have 5 wins out of 6. A draw with Ukraine is the only slight blemish. So they haven't lost any, but there will be questions asked about their abilities to play against those formidable foes. 11 goals and 4 conceded in that time shows that the team has strength at both sides of the pitch going into the tournament. And one other brilliant point about France, and I think this is something that you and I have discussed with other teams, the likes of Denmark and Holland as well. the manager has stayed the same. So they've got some real kind of solidity there. Going into this tournament, France has to be one of the favourites, don't they, Ben?
Yes, they do. I'm not on France. I'm actually leaning more towards Belgium. But look, the French strong in every department. I think in N'Golo Kante, they've probably got one of the best defensive midfielders in the world. Domestically, if you look at that, attack with Mbappe and Benzema, I think Benzema comes off the back of a season where he's had 30 goal involvements. That's only the second time in his career. And Mbappe is, I think, 47 goals and 46 appearances. 46 goals and 47 appearances. So he's been superb, but his international form obviously isn't as good as that. Only 16 goals and 42 caps. So, one of the highlights for me, one of the standout performers in recent major tournaments is Antoine Griezmann. And of course, if you've been following social media, you'll know that Antoine has been managing Newcastle and Football Manager and actually signed Mbappe for 134 million. So he seems to be doing a good job on and off the pitch. Now he's had 14 direct goal involvements in 14 major tournament games. So it priced it, 10.5 million on FanTeam. He's definitely sort of piquing my interest.
Yeah, going into this, I think another good point about France is the 11 pretty much selects itself. So there's not going to be too many rotational positions. But the question is, do you want to bring them in for this group stage? And also, who do you bring in? For me, I think that they've got some tough opponents, as I said, in Portugal, Germany. It makes you question, do you want their defensive assets? The side is most likely to line up with a 4-3-3. Lloris in goal, Pavard, Varane, Kimpembe and Hernandez in defence. Midfield of Rabiot, Kante, Pogba. And up front, Griezmann and Mbappe will probably be the solid picks. And you just don't know if it's going to be Benzema or Giroud. But of these players, as stated, Benzema, maybe Hernandez and Rabiot as well, likely to face rotation. So you can focus on the others. But as stated, I think the problem with the team is I don't fancy them for the first few games. Like get them in for Hungary, but against Germany and against Portugal, it's going to be really difficult. I can't see them scoring a ton of goals. They might concede one or two. So it's going to be much more difficult. My point is that there's other assets, as you stated there, maybe the Belgians, who are going to have a much easier group stage, and you think, right, I can captain their players, I can be secure in 1, 2 or 3 of their matches, whereas with France, really you can only be secure with one. So it seems a little bit strange to say it, but I too am missing out on France assets for this start of the tournament. So yeah, let's talk about it. Match day 2, Hungary, great and enticing, but it's hard because if you were to move your team about for these games, you might have to take a hit to get somebody in. You do have that limitless chip in terms of Fantasy Euro, and in FanTeam you kind of want to save wildcarding for a little bit later. So I think it's just really difficult to kind of justify bringing them in. But the question does have to be, for me, Griezmann or Mbappe. Those are the two big ones for me. And you kind of look into it, as you said there, Mbappe has been on sensational form. Griezmann has been really good in terms of tournament football. He seems to turn up big for these tournaments. He had the Golden Boot in Euro 2016, second most goals in World Cup 2018 behind Harry Kane. But looking at it, in Fantasy Euro, Mbappe's 12 million, Griezmann's 11. In FanTeam, the price difference is pretty huge, with Mbappe at 13 million and Griezmann at 10.5. Now, the problem for me is I would have said Griezmann 100% the pick if he was on penalties. But in the last few games, Giroud, Mbappe, Benzema, Griezmann have all taken penalties themselves with the other players on the pitch. So it's not actually certain who the penalty taker is for the team. And that removes a little bit of the zeal from Griezmann, which I would have said was, 100% a selling point on him. So really, I think if you're looking to save money, then Griezmann is the better option. But Mbappe is just as good as well. He's so explosive. And in terms of a defence like Germany and Portugal as well, who have some older legs, Mbappe is going to be explosive, really exploiting the likes. So with Portugal, maybe a Pepe or a Fonte, they won't have the legs to keep up with him. And in Germany, the way that they play, they quite often have a three at the back. Matt Hummels is going to be in there. And again, he can be outpaced by Mbappe all day. So there is real tactical considerations as well. In terms of those picks then, Ben, do you think that it's right? I mean, do you have a preference, Griezmann over Mbappe, or would you look elsewhere in the squad? Maybe a Pogba, who is a fantastic assister?
I mean, I'll probably weigh into the Griezmann Mbappe debate, and at this moment, I'm leaning towards Griezmann, but and I'm focusing mainly or only on FanTeam, and ideally you like more attacking slots in that team. We haven't, and that's going to make it difficult for who we pick, because you could look at, for me, Lukaku is a standout at his price point, 10 point, I think it's is it 11.5 for Lukaku, and they've in that group should score a hatful. You can look at Harry Kane. I know he's priced at 13.5, but England as well should score a hatful. And, then if you're looking at maybe Mbappe or Griezmann, then, that's a large chunk of your budget, over a third of your budget just going on 3 attacking players, especially when there looks to be value, elsewhere. I go back to it again. Yilmaz, 4.5 million. I mean, I am blown away by that. There'll be a lot of people who want to plump for Ronaldo. So I'm not sure. I may, I'm going to enter more than one team. So that's one of the big advantages from playing FanTeam, as opposed to something like, the official Fantasy Premier League game. And one of those teams may have or will have a Griezmann in it. Whether it's me main team, I think what I'll do is I'll maybe look to have 5 or 6 players who form the nucleus of all my sides, and then there'll be a smattering of fringe players making up the numbers, and I'll sort of maybe have a look at the Frances, maybe have a look at the Turkeys, maybe even pepper some of. We'll move on to Portugal, and I'll tell you what my thoughts are for them as well. So, look, it's interesting. I'm by no means near that final draft yet. I'm still tinkering, so there's still a lot to go on, and a lot of players that could still come in and out of my seed.
Yeah, I think there is a lot of the players that can come in and out my side. For example, maybe a Robert Lewandowski. But I agree with you that the France players are kind of low down on my list. You look at the players and the value that you get as well in terms of team. Some of them, Yilmaz, kind of Lukaku, even Harry Kane. What I would say as well, with Harry Kane being a little bit more expensive than Mbappe, is he's got so much better games. You can see him scoring against Croatia. You can see him scoring against everybody in that group. Whereas there are the question marks. Obviously, France are an incredible side. That they're second ranked, but they could be easily first. Whereas they're playing much more difficult sides. Germany and Portugal are not going to be pushovers. It's going to be a really difficult kind of group for them. And so, yeah, my attention is actually focused elsewhere. I love Mbappe. I love watching him. I think Griezmann is fantastic as well. But their price point and the difficulty of that group, I just don't think justifies it. Just quickly, in terms of team tactics, the France team play a quick build-up approach. They're not necessarily focused on possession, which is quite interesting for such a team that plays really good football. And they're quite pragmatic because they've got so many different players of so many different skill sets that they can play the long balls up to somebody like Giroud, or they can play quickly down the wings, or they can play through the middle. They've got all of that. But what I think is most impressive about them, to be able to play through the lines, find those wonderful, wonderful cutting edge passes, is they got Paul Pogba. And I think the strength of France is they play Pogba in his best position, whereas Manchester United haven't done that. And I think that that's almost been a detriment for Man United at club level. But on international level, we see Paul Pogba in his truest, best form. So they can cross, they've got that height ability as well. There doesn't seem to be many problems across the pitch for them. Defensively, incredibly solid. They try to counter-press, cause opponents, on the front foot there with the speed of Mbappe. And so it's a team with not many weaknesses. It's just the people in the group that puts me off. But let's talk about another team in the group, Portugal, FIFA ranking of 5th, qualification position of 2nd, and expected position of 1st. And this was quite a shock for them because they actually got pipped by Ukraine in terms of this qualification process. They scored 22 goals, and I don't think goal scoring really for them is a huge problem because of the man himself, Cristiano Ronaldo, up front, who was top scorer with 11. But we will get on to him in a second or so. But the top assister was Bernardo Silva, and I think some people are sleeping on him. So the current holders of the FI go into this tournament, I think, much stronger than they were when they did win the tournament in 2016. They did win the UEFA Nations League inaugural tournament. They beat Netherlands at home in Porto. But then they've had a few humbling experiences in qualification. And I would say that the side kind of were humbled as well with that second place finish to Ukraine. And what will add to annoyance is the fact that they were second best for XG per 90 and 4th best for XG conceded per 90 in terms of all teams in qualification. So they almost let themselves down. They finished 2nd in their most recent Nations League group to France. As stated, there 2 losses to them, and they made hard work of beating Azerbaijan in World Cup qualification as well. So in their last 6 competitive matches, they have 4 wins, 1 draw, 1 loss. Not good, not bad, but for a team that they want to be entering that with as many good performances as possible. And the Azerbaijan one does bring some questions. What are your thoughts and feelings, just first of all, with Portugal? Are you looking at any of their assets, or is it the same kind of situation? I mean, for me personally, I'm starting off with Ronaldo and potentially Bernardo Silva in my squad for that Hungary game, but then I'll be jumping off them as soon as possible.
Yeah, what I would say about this group, and it probably differs from any of the other ones, this group could stay competitive until the end. If you look at some of the other groups, you could imagine, again, I go back to England and Belgium, they could easily win those first 2 games. And that, in essence, could make that 3rd game a difficult one to navigate for managers, because coaches will rotate, players may be rested. You could see a Lukaku on the bench. You may see, your Mason Mounts, and managers really using the strength and depth of their squad. With this group, you cannot really see a team sort of steamrolling anybody and just walking away with it. So managers may be required to go full strength in all of those games, which is good if you're owning some of those premium assets. But for me, I'm with you on Bernardo Silva. I mean, if you look at his metrics from domestically across the top 5, European leagues this season in terms of non-penalty XG, assists, progressive carries, touches in the opponent's penalty box, he's in and around that sort of 95th to 99th percentile. He's been absolutely outstanding. Massively, maybe 14 or 15 competitive games for Portugal. He's absolutely battered Bruno in terms of his goal involvement. And Bruno, because of his presence in the Premier League and his forms into arriving at Old Trafford, will attract a lot of interest. But I think at £1 million less, I think Bernardo, for me, deserves, he's getting my thumbs up anyway. And Ronaldo, I would love to, but like I say, I'm limited to those 3 attackers. And I've got those 3 strikers nailed down. And unfortunately, Winker isn't in there. He isn't one. unfortunately.
The Winker is being left out. I mean, the other day I confused them for Joe Linton, so, maybe he's not that good after all, or maybe Joe Linton is that good after all. But in terms
he's
of...
he's a can it say that? Or can it say that?
I'll bleep it out so that people kind of know what you said, but without knowing. In terms of the tactics, just quickly, Germany play Hungary in that match day 3, and we will talk about our chips and our tactics in another video, but that could be a good time to play the limitless chip, because Portugal and France will have a lot to play for, and so will Germany. So maybe a switch from the Bernardo Silva to Serge Gnabry could be an interesting one for that final game. And then maybe Germany, some of their defensive assets as well, could be a good tactic to play with that. Just in terms of the team news then, I'm going to talk you through it. I think you have to be so tactical here with it, but for me, a huge weakness of the side is the goalkeeper, Rui Patricio. I kind of talked to the Tifo football man, Alex Stewart. I'm sure a lot of people will know him very well. And we talked on air and off air about a weakness of Wolves has always been their goalkeeper. Patricio has a lot of mistakes in him. Since being in the goalkeeper, he's not managed a positive XG prevented, showing that his shot-stopping abilities are quite weak. He's a mainstay in the team, and I think obviously there is that bit about him that he gives kind of assurance that they know who's going to be between the sticks, and there's no kind of thoughts and feelings about that. But for me, that always means there's a liability of a sloppy goal or conceding a goal in some of these games. So I wouldn't go with him as a goalkeeper. I don't believe in him too much, and that means that the other assets, just defensively, I'm not too sure about. But it would be remiss of me not to talk about João Cancelo, 6.5 in FanTeam, 6 million in Euro Fantasy, fantastic player. He's the archetypal Guardiola wingback. Again, problems will be that Ruben Dias plays with him, but also Fonte or Pepe, and they're both above 35 years old. The erraticism of Pepe adds worries in that back line. Fonte, a great performer, but his age may be a concern. He may be rotated as well with Pepe. And on the left side of defence, Nuno Mendes might be pushing Guerreiro in terms of a starting position there. So Cancelo, Diaz are kind of nailed. Cancelo is the one that I would plumb for if I was going for a Portuguese defender, because you look at it, he's got incredible XA in the top 12% per 90, great shooter in terms of XG per 90, top 20%, amazing dribbler, ball distribution of a midfielder, and so he has top 13% goal creating actions per 90. In terms of the midfield, I think Jota, João Felix, and the other kind of midfielders that will be in there, apart from Fernandes, Bernardo Silva and Cristiano Ronaldo, all have question marks and all have a little bit of a reduced fantasy ability. But I would say as well, I'm agreeing with you here 100%, Ben. Fernandes, I think he's a little bit overpriced when you look at his international output. I think he's priced that way because of his domestic output. 9 million for FanTeam, 10.5 for Fantasy Euro in this Portugal side. Whereas Bernardo Silva's 8 million for FanTeam, 8.5 million for Euro Fantasy. And although Fernandes plays high up, he's given, a kind of a license to thrill in terms for Manchester United. He can do whatever he wants there. But for Portugal, and I was talking to a Portuguese friend about this, he's much more defensively minded. He plays more in the centre of the pitch, and it actually allows Bernardo Silva, Ronaldo, and whoever is up there with them carte blanche to attack however they like. So in terms of it, Fernandes in his last 14 competitive matches, 1 goal, 1 assist, whereas Bernardo Silva, 4 goals, 8 assists in his last 15 competitive matches. So for me, Bernardo Silva is the pick there. He's cheaper as well. And I think he could be a differential for quite a few people, because people will be looking at, Bruno Fernandes. I get it. He's obviously absolutely fantastic in terms of club level, but people are a little bit blinkered by how good he is at club level. They're looking at he's going to be the same person that he is for Manchester United. And unfortunately, he's not. And so kind of looking at the ownership figures in terms of Fantasy Euro, 18% of teams have Bruno Fernandes in, and only 2% have Bernardo Silva. So really, I think he's a steal of a differential. I mean, for you, Ben, is that right in your differential dinery territory?
Yeah, he ticks boxes. He ticks all my boxes. And I do like the Diego Jota pick as well. But although I would be a little bit reluctant to double up on Portugal, given the difficulties around, this group. It's a tough one. So I think, I would limit to one, and Bernardo just edges it for the moment.
Yeah, in terms of it in my team, I am doubled up at the moment with Silva and Ronaldo, just because I think they're going to really try and maul Hungary. And I am probably, in terms of Fantasy Euro, going to play limitless game week 3. So that does mean that game week 2, I've kind of already got a planned transfer with getting Ronaldo out, Harry Kane in, or somebody else as a different striker. I'm kind of happy to almost risk it with Silva, though, because of his price level. So I think Ronaldo, in those 2 difficult games against Germany and France, I think it would be outrageously risky to keep him in there for the 12 million pricing. Whereas Silva's more manageable, and I don't mind kind of bringing him in and out of the squad. It's a much more manageable kind of asset there. And yeah, Cristiano Ronaldo, I think he's a little bit like Lukaku or Harry Kane or somebody else. Fantastic data, elite striker. I don't think I need to go much into his data. And as stated at the start, he was the top scorer for Portugal. He's going to be their main man. So if you want the goals that are in this side, it's going to be kind of Bernardo Silva or him. But let's move on to Germany. They're always one of the favourites going into these tournaments, but they've got a fairly low FIFA ranking this time around, 12th. Qualification position of 1st, but actually they over-exceeded there, and they had an expected position of 2nd. They had 7 wins, 1 loss against the Netherlands. They scored 30 goals, 22.0 XG, 2.71 XG per 90, 7 goals conceded, and they did well defensively because they had a 10.8 XGA or 0.92 XGA per 90. Looking at it, the top goal scorer was Serge Gnabry, and again, he might be somebody that a few people are sleeping on. Looking at the quality of the German side, there's so many people in there, but since qualification, the side has had some humiliating defeats and performances that I think a lot of people should be aware of and should be worried of. The team failed to keep a clean sheet in any of their Nations League's appearances, and I think one of the worst ones was a 6-0 loss to Spain, which is the worst loss that a German side has had since 1931. And their 13 goals conceded in that Nations League just means there's real concerns over the back line. I don't think Joachim Low has really sorted it out. And the worries continue in the World Cup qualifiers. They had their first loss in 20 years in a World Cup qualifier, not to England, France, Spain, somebody like that, to North Macedonia, 2-1. Credit to North Macedonia doing fantastic bits there, but there has to be questions asked. Joachim Low, as mentioned, he is the manager there, but he'll be leaving after 15 years in charge of the team. Stuttering form, I think, has kind of exposed that maybe his tenure is due to come to an end. Now, there's obviously the psychological aspect that a lot of players will want to send off Joachim Low with a huge hurrah and try and get to the semi-final or the final and give him a really good send-off. But there is the flip side, the obvious argument that there is a reason why he's leaving is because his management hasn't been good enough recently. I think he's lost his way a little bit, and experiment with and without the old guards. He got rid of Thomas Müller and Matt Hummels. I think Germany aren't as strong as they once were, Ben. I mean, do you agree with me?
I've had these discussions around Germany, and I actually flagged them as potentially as one of the biggest flops of the tournament. Although you look at that squad and individually look very strong on paper, but you cannot look past those results, and in particular the North Macedonia one. You question harmony maybe within the camp. the Hummels and the Muller being initially, severed ties from the international scene, and then all of a sudden they're recalled and thrust back in there. I'm just not convinced. I'm not. And in Werner, you've got a player who couldn't hit a barn door. I think we're yet to see the best of Havertz. I still think he's coming off the back of long COVID, and he's still not quite there. I have heard people talking about Gnabry as a possibility within their squad, suggest that he might be a little bit of a differential. But again, he's a little bit like, he's very Marmite. People either love him or hate him. There's not many that sit on the fence with him. They either think, see him as a real asset, or they just won't entertain him. But for me, it's, defensively, that's where the Germans, because inherently you always look at that German defensive backline and think, that's the foundation of their team. That's where they build from. And you just don't see that in that squad at the moment. I think there's a mistake in Rudiger every time he walks on that pitch. And yeah, look, I think they may Joachim Low, it's his swan song, his one last hurrah. But maybe, where's that desire, where's that passion? And I don't think it's going to be a fairy tale ending for the German coach.
Yeah, I agree. Patchy defensive record makes it difficult for me to kind of justify almost any of their players, because, you build from the back. This is a team that like to do that. And one of the defensive assets that I possibly would have considered, Joshua Kimmich, classed as a midfielder. So their other defensive assets aren't attacking enough. I don't think that they'll get very many returns in terms of clean sheets either. So I can't really justify it. You move up into the midfield, and there's a lot of question marks there, but I think Toni Kroos is probably the nailed start in that side. 7.5 in FanTeam, 7 mil in Fantasy Euro. And I think he's probably an interesting option in terms of this team, maybe for that final Hungary game as well, because he is on set pieces and he is on penalties for the side. Could be a cheaper way into the team. I think that he's probably the only kind of midfield option that I would look at apart from Serge Gnabry. And moving forward, Thomas Müller's the only one, because Leroy Sané, Havertz, Werner, they're tough picks to justify because they're not 100% nailed. I think Havertz has almost worked his way into happening to be picked, but this is Joachim Low. You just don't know what you're going to get with him. He could start Leroy Sané. Werner could be in there as well, because he is quite often in that international setup. None of these are nailed picks apart from, as stated, Thomas Müller and Serge Gnabry. So we'll start with, he's quite divisive, I do agree with you. 9 million in FanTeam, 9.5 in Euro Fantasy. And he's really grown recently in terms of importance for Bayern Munich, but also Germany as well. At club level, data is fantastic for an attack-minded winger. 0.46 goals per 90, top 8% across Europe's top 5 leagues. And astonishingly, a 49.5% shot accuracy means that he's really on target, and that actually culminates in a top 6% non-penalty XG per 90. So the form has actually continued for him in terms of national level as well. Germany's top goal scorer, as stated in qualification, but he averages a goal every 109 minutes for Germany compared to 176 minutes for Bayern Munich. But also 15 goals in 20 caps for Germany is an astonishing record, and that's as many as Timo Werner from 18 fewer games. So I think he's coming into the right form. He's probably one of these individuals. We stated that teams have come into the tournament too late, or players have kind of dipped out of fashion, whereas I think Gnabry is as well. But what do you think about his price point and position? I mean, will you kind of experiment with him just for that Hungary game, or is he just a total avoid for you?
Because I'm looking ahead, playing FanTeam only. We have a wild card at the end of the group stage, and I want to be looking at players who are nailed and who I think are maybe are teams who are going to progress to that knockout phase. You're going to have price hikes within that, so there will be price fluctuations within that FanTeam. And I just, like I say, I'm not convinced on this German team. If I was to look at anybody, he would probably be the one for me. I like that he's a midfielder and he's playing out of position. At 9 million, he might just be a little bit rich for me, dependent on the rest of the makeup of my squad. Attack is where the bulk of my money is going to be spent, and it depends on where I can shoehorn everybody else in. There may be a few differentials in that back line. Defensively, or FanTeam, I should say, weights heavily on maybe offensive players, midfielders, and attackers in terms of rewarding, and they hit the defense particularly hard. So, my strategy, I think this tournament will be to maybe load up in those attacking positions, but maybe not with Naby. He may make one of the teams, but he's certainly not one of those players that's going to be in the nucleus of all three.
Yeah, I think the thing is, you've hit the nail on the head in terms of the comparison with Thomas Müller. Müller himself, FanTeam 8.5, 9 million, but he's a forward, so there is that lesser goal output of points. And I think that does remove that element from you, because Muller's not on penalties, Gnabry isn't as well. So they're kind of almost neck and neck. They will be both the central points of it, and Muller has this mythical Starman effect when he does play for Germany. He is the target man for them. But yeah, I think that extra price and that forward area where, we both just discussed in terms of Cristiano Ronaldo, there just doesn't seem to be enough forward positions, because you're considering Lukaku, Kane, Lewandowski, and all these other players, Mbappe, probably much further ahead than Thomas Müller in my pecking order. And so really, it is Gnabry or nothing for me in terms of this. So I'll move on to the tactics of the team just quickly, and then on to Hungary, even though realistically there's not much to say about them. So Germany usually set up with a 4-3-3 or 4-1-4-1 structure. That would have been too many players on the pitch. The side like to defend with a light press, winning the ball in the opponent's half. But I would argue that recently the system has not been successful. They've allowed too many shots to be conceded, so their press is not working, and that's why they've struggled to keep clean sheets. What I would say is, in comparison to maybe a Belgium who sit in a mid to lower block, and that kind of suits the athleticism of the team. And maybe this is the problem with Germany, is they're trying to play a pressing style, but they don't have the legs, they don't have the players to do it. What I would say is, in attack, the side are much more successful, and that's why my only kind of viewpoint will be on that attack. They've been their quality midfield means that the team like to keep possession. They love those cutting passes, and they've got some players really to do that as well. They overload the midfield, but again, the overloading of the midfield sometimes comes at a cost to their defence, because a defender will kind of nip in terms of one of the wing backs, and that means that quite often there's three at the back. Matt Hummels getting on in his years, Rudiger, somebody with a mistake in him. That leaves the defence a little bit too open. So they do like to take a few shots per match. That could work for FanTeam as well, in terms of maybe a Serge Gnabry pick, in terms of somebody who might be getting lots of shots off. But for me, price, positioning of some of these players, and the difficulty of the group, coupled with a really poor kind of German output recently, I don't think Germany are really going to be on my shopping list at all. And I think you'd say that's fair as well, Ben. So
yeah, wholeheartedly agree there. Yeah,
we'll move on.
Argue.
Yeah, no, I don't think there's any arguments over that one. It's a shame as well, because I do like Germany. They've historically been a good side, but they're stuck in probably transitions between generations. Now let's move it to Hungary. FIFA ranking of 37th, qualification position of 4th, expected position of 3rd, 4 wins, 4 losses for the side, only 8 goals scored, 11 goals conceded. As stated, in the situation that they find themselves in, it's reasonable to say that probably no Hungarian assets are really worth consideration. Defensively, no. Attacking wise, no. All attention should be on the Portuguese, German, and France assets, probably when they're playing these people. But in terms of getting any of them in, unless you want them as like a 4.0 bench occupier so that you've got a bit more money to spend in your team, I find no real justification to buy or play any of their players. I mean, is that right in terms of those tactics there, Ben?
Yeah, it's a difficult one. There has been one slight change in the scoring matrix with FanTeam, which makes these players slightly, and it's only little, slightly more attractive. So those who are familiar with the Premier League game will have picked up that you get the extra points for players being on the pitch. They get an extra point if they're winning, but also you lose a point if the team is are being defeated while they're minutes on. Now, like I say, there's been a slight change in that this going into the tournament, and that's been sort of leveled a little bit, and I think it's been reduced now to 0.3, so the impact of being on the pitch is lessened, and so those teams who aren't maybe expected to do so well, it may, and I'm just saying may, make some of those assets slightly more appealing. And because you don't want to be going on a pitch and inherently 1 point down before you even start, because that can be quite frustrating.
Yeah, I just think there's other teams that are on the cusp of being a differential or challenging in a tough group. Maybe the likes of Russia, you could possibly justify a Golovin or a Dzuba, but with these Hungarian assets, there's not one that I can kind of say, well, they might do well in this group, because realistically, Germany, Portugal, France are light years ahead of them in terms of quality, and they'll be going out quite early. Just quickly, in terms of the team tactics, before we wrap up, in attack, the side will play a 3-5-2 formation. They're predicated on the long ball style. This is a poor kind of footballing style. Lots of long passes, crosses into areas, without any focus of keeping possession. It's a very kind of negative, trying to stop the attack of the other team as much as possible. And when they defend, they go into a 5-3-2 mid-block. They try and get into the other opponent's faces, a little bit like Russia. They're busy and press up high, but of course that doesn't work too well for them, because they seem to concede at least one goal every match. And instead they often recover the ball in their own half because the press doesn't really work. So in terms of it, unfortunately, Hungary, there's no picks for me in terms of this team, and I think you're in agreement, Ben.
Yeah, it's an avoid for me, unfortunately. I mean, bookies have priced this up pretty well for me. I think they've got them at 40-1 to win this group, 400-1 outsiders to win the actual tournament. There's probably only North Macedonia who are priced, bigger than that. So, yeah, not for me, unfortunately. But you never know. Look, they've got a couple of decent, in Peter Gulaski and Willie Owen from the RB Leipzig guys. They may be able to throw a spanner in the works of some of those top seeds, and you never know. But it'll not be me taking a punt on them.
Definitely not me either, but I wish them the best of luck. I wish all the teams there the best of luck going into this tournament. But of course, we wish you the best of luck with choosing your teams. Make sure to get involved with the competition. It's super easy, as explained, ABC123. All you have to do is like, share the video, comment below, but also subscribe to the channel. That's the first step. Second step is to follow the FanTeam link that we have and sign up, and then send us your team ID for the third step there. And we congratulate everybody that has been involved with the competition. We are doing a Rate My Team this week as well, and you can win more opportunities there. So send in your teams, send in your IDs there as well. But as always, I hope that you found this information useful. And what you can do as well is, if you've missed some of the data or don't fully understand what I've explained, my data insights will be on the Premier Injuries websites. They're quite hefty. They're about 10 pages each in terms of each group, but there's a lot of good stuff in there, a lot of data and analysis that I've gone into to help me and Ben with our picks. So head over to the Premier Injuries website, have a look at that, take good advantage of some free data for you to use in terms of your fantasy or fan teams going into Euro 2020. But for me, I'm going to hand it over to Ben. This isn't our last video, of course. We've got so much more content for you, but I'm going to wish you the best of luck with choosing your teams.
Yeah, thanks, Jason. And thanks for all your hard work. Yeah, I've had a look through those data packs and absolutely immense, by the way. So, if you want to try and steal a march in your mini league and get the edge ahead of that first game in the Euro 2020 blank tournament, then it's highly recommended. But guys, look, that's us done for all of the group stages. But like Jason said, we will be back. We've got Rate My Team. We've got one or two other little surprises. So we've even got the Fantasy Doc back on the channel. He's going to give us a rundown of some of the key injury updates and what we can expect to the tournament, just in terms of those players who've been managing their load throughout the season, and going into gain this congested fixture period. So keep your eyes and ears open. We push everything through socials, and also keep commenting, keep following, keep subscribing, and keep trying to win prizes, because we will be giving them away until the tournament starts. So for now, we're done. See you all again very soon.